number 2. This session is actually going to be taught by trainer Matt. It's the class we had last year, and it still applies to the Mac, and it's very, very detailed and goes into a little deeper explanation of the keyboard's navigation and other things you will need to navigate on your Mac. So let's jump right in and let trainer Matt teach us how to navigate the keyboard layout, among other things. Take it away.
Masters of the fundamentals. People who are so good at the basics that everything else can happen on top of that. And with navigating with voiceover on iOS, on Mac OS, if you learn these fundamentals, we call them predictable patterns, things that you can begin to see that work. If you learn them in one place, they work everywhere. By the end of today's class, now let me be clear, there are many ways of doing things before we do anything else about the keyboard. Now, there's a number of different keyboards, right? Even Apple, Apple has its Magic Keyboard. They have the Magic Keyboard with the numeric keypad. You can get third-party keyboards. These are going to have the potential to have different layouts, right? But there are some things that are going to be common. And so before we can really delve in, we need to make sure we know our keyboard layout. There is a couple of things. I just want to point out a few things. And again, I can't tell you exactly the layout of your keyboard, but I can give you some pointers. Now, the first pointer is that for the most part, it really is the same. If you are a Windows user, you still have the QWERTY layout, right? So QWE, that's unchanged. And your numbers come above the Q row, none of that's different. There are some minor differences, and more in name than anything else. For example, on the Mac, they call it the return key instead of the enter key. And there's not two different deletes. If you're a Windows user, you might be used to a backspace, which deletes the character to the left of the cursor. And you have a delete key, which is a forward delete that, deletes the character to the right of the cursor. Well, on Mac keyboards, Apple keyboards, you only have one of those. It's located where the backspace key is on a Windows machine, but it actually is not a backspace. It's a delete. So there is no backspace. There's only a delete. You're going to go you're deleting to the right, okay?
Unless you have a full-size keyboard with a numpad. There is a delete key in the 6-pack or the 9-pack, I think it is.
Oh, is on the Apple one with the numeric keypad, they do have a delete on that?
Yes, they do.
Okay. And that, again, that's one of those places where there will be some differences. But so on a Magic keyboard that comes standard with, let's say, your iMac or iMac Pro, or your built-in keyboard on a MacBook, there will not be two. There'll only be one, and it's going to be the delete, not a backspace. I also want to talk about the bottom row of keys that sort of flank the space bar, or next to the space bar. Excuse me, because those are somewhat different if you're a Windows user. Now, if you're already an iOS user and you're using an Apple Smart Keyboard, a Logitech Slim, any of these, then some of this is already familiar to you. If we're talking about a standard Magic keyboard with no numpad or a MacBook keyboard, you're going to find the bottom left key, very bottom, is either going to be a function FN key or it's going to be a globe key, depending on the model of the keyboard, for like emojis and things of that nature. Now, that function key is in a different location on the keyboards that have the numpad, as Cliff called it, the 6-pack or the 9-pack. That's where that function key is going to be on a keyboard with a numpad. But on the standard ones that don't have it, it's the bottom left key. I'll explain a little more about it soon. The key to its right is going to be the control key. So that's very similar to our Windows experience so far. We go to the right of that is when things start to look different. To the right of the control key, we find the option key. The option key. So it's control followed by option. And then directly to the right of the option key, the command key. Again, that's control, option, command. Or if we have a standard Magic Keyboard, it's function, control, option, command. And then we have the space bar. Okay, so just to the left of the space bar is the command key, just to give you another frame of reference. To the right of the space bar is another command key and another option key. And I think if you have one of those full-size keyboards, there's even another control key. Am I right?
You are right for
Okay.
once.
Okay. All right. Not on the smaller ones, but on the full-size ones.
Right.
All right. So again, the bottom row. Now this is the standard perspective, not the full size. Okay. Function, control, option, command, spacebar, command, option. All right. Let's talk about the top row, viewed as superfluous or more than is needed, is the top row of what we think of as like F1 through F12. And that's why you don't really see them on the iPad keyboards. Those function keys are not recognized by iOS. Now, on the Mac, you have two choices, and this is really important. You have two choices as to what those keys do. That top row of keys, F1, F2, etc., can be used as what's known as system keys, system controls, or standard function keys. So on the Mac, by default, right out of the box, okay, they're system keys. For example, now the top left is escape, okay, but to its right, what we think of as F1, the F1 and F2 are display brightness. Okay. Now this is on the Magic Keyboard with an iMac, like I have. Some of you, if you have a MacBook, maybe they'll do keyboard brightness because some of these have, lighted keyboards. Okay. So you can adjust the keyboard brightness as well. But on the iMac with the Magic Keyboard, they do the display brightness. Then F3 and F4 are Mac OS. Right now, they're things that may not make sense to you, but we're going to teach them either today or on Monday when we do Mac OS Basics, Mission Control and Launchpad, F3 and F4, respectively. F5 and F6 on the iMac don't do anything in that configuration. And F7, 8, and 9 are media controls. 7 is previous track. F8 is play pause. F9 is next track. And then F10, 11, and 12 are volume controls, F10 being mute and F11 and F12 being volume down and volume up. Now, when they're in that mode, if you want to use them as standard function keys, you add that FN key, that function key, which is either located at the bottom left of the keyboard or in that 6-pack or 9-pack, right? So if you want, for example, to perform a voiceover command that has F8 in it, you're going to need to add the function key with the F8 because that is how you get a standard function use out of those keys. Now, for folks who prefer to do it, they can change a simple setting to reverse the default so that automatically, without the use of the FN key, those top keys are now standard function keys. So it's personal preference how you do that. And when we start talking about Mac OS Basics, we'll be sure and show you where that setting is. For those who already are comfortable with the basics, it's under System Preferences and under Keyboard. And it's just called, it says use all F1, F2, etc. as standard function keys. And you either check it or uncheck it. By default, it is unchecked. Now, the one command that does not need the function key, regardless of which mode that top row is set for, is the voiceover on and off command. And that is Command F5. Remember that command key we talked about that's at the bottom, just to the left or to the right of the space bar? Command F5 turns voiceover on, turns it off. And so you don't need to add the function key in there when you're using that one. You can still simulate home and page up and page down if you add the function key to the arrow keys. And so that does work. And VoiceOver just like on iOS. And, some people don't even realize this because iOS, iPad OS, TV OS, they don't announce this. When you get them, they don't say, you don't hear a voice saying, if you want to use VoiceOver, do this. But we all know, if we've done it, and if we don't, we're going to learn it right now, that any Apple device, if you get it fresh out of the box, brand new, or you restore it to factory, you can always turn VoiceOver on during setup right out of the box with the accessibility shortcut. But the Mac is different in that it does announce that for you. So when you get a Mac out of the box, now I can't speak to the M1 Macs. Rita and Cliff would have to tell us that. But on every other Mac that I've ever worked with, including my new iMac that I got, it does talk when you turn it on. It says it takes a few seconds. You got to wait a little bit, but it says to you, the first thing it'll say is press return to use English. After you do that,
the M1s are the same way.
They are the same?
Yeah, I've used my Mac Mini, and I've helped set up one MacBook Air and one MacBook Pro. They do the exact same thing.
So you're already seeing there's, a million different ways to get the job done. Point is, Command F5 or Siri or Command key plus the triple click of the power button will be able to turn on VoiceOver both during setup and during everyday normal use, on the login screen, anywhere else that you want VoiceOver to be turned on or off. For starters, I want you to know what the VoiceOver keys are. Okay, just like on Windows, I hate comparing to Windows, okay, but I know we have some folks who have come from that environment, all right? And in a similar fashion, you have operating system keyboard shortcuts, and you have screen reader keyboard shortcuts. The major difference is that on Apple, on Mac, you're primarily going to be navigating with VoiceOver commands. All right, that's going to be your go-to, and then secondarily will be these Mac OS keyboard shortcuts. Navigating around the desktop, all that stuff, you're going to typically, for most people, use these VoiceOver commands. And like on iOS, you're going to be moving the VoiceOver cursor. If you're familiar with iOS, you know there's this VoiceOver cursor represented visually by a rectangle, and it surrounds whatever, it's around whatever is highlighted. It's the same thing with VoiceOver on the Mac. So how do we most easily, most effectively move the VoiceOver cursor? We are going to use VoiceOver keys when we use VoiceOver commands. Now, the VoiceOver keys, or sometimes referred to as the VO keys, V as in Victor, O as in Oscar for VoiceOver, by default, you're going to find Control and Option being the VoiceOver keys. And you can also use Caps Lock instead if you prefer, and you have a choice, or you can have it set for both. Again, that's a setting. So when I say VoiceOver keys or VO keys, it means you're going to use Control and Option or the Caps Lock. And so if I say to you, VO right arrow, that means Control Option right arrow or Caps Lock right arrow. And those are going to be our first VoiceOver commands that we're going to learn. When we learn iOS, we learn that you can swipe or flick, some people say, to the right with one finger to move to the right. You can swipe or flick to the left to move back to the previous element to the left. On a Mac, if you have a trackpad, in a few minutes you're going to learn you can do that as well. But right now we're talking keyboard. So if you want to move to the right, one element at a time, VO right arrow, Control Option right arrow, or Caps Lock right arrow. You want to move back to the left, VO left arrow, okay? And you can repeatedly do this as many times as you want. All right, that's your left and right. What about if I want to click something, activate it, double click, you know what you think of as that, okay? Open an item, activate an item, VO space bar, Control Option space, or Caps Lock space, all right? Even just with those commands, you can do a lot. Move to the left and to the right and activate something whenever you want it. Move to the right, Control Option right arrow. Move to the left, Control Option left arrow. Activate, open, click, whatever, VO space or Control Option space bar, or caps lock space bar, of course. Now, one of the most fundamental things you need to learn about Mac OS is one of the few differences. When you open, and I don't know if most people realize this, you probably do. When you open an iPad app or an iPhone app, with the exception of your split screen apps, like if you're multitasking, typically an app on iOS is full screen. That means it takes up the entire screen. Okay. There are ways to multitask, but you just open an app natively, it's just going to take up the whole screen. On a Mac, it's more of a traditional PC experience in that you have apps that take up Windows, right? Not Windows, the operating system, but Windows on the screen, okay? And so an app is the size of a window. Now, you can take an app to full screen. That's doable on the Mac. One of the most important fundamental differences that you need to learn from day one is you need to learn what interacting means, okay? Now, let's do one more comparison between Mac and Windows, okay? Because what I need you to see, and I always share this with iOS and iPad OS, you understand I cannot speak for Apple. None of us works for Apple. Well, Lynn at an Apple store, but she doesn't, she's not in engineering or accessibility team of that level. And, Apple does not endorse these courses. All right? We are on our, we're working independently of Apple, okay? We're not partnered up with them or anything, so I can't speak for them officially. But it definitely seems, and I think this is a good thing, it definitely seems like Apple wants us to have the closest experience possible to our sighted counterparts. Meaning, and this is especially true in iOS, meaning that if somebody says to me, hey, Matt, that icon you want is at the upper right corner of the screen, I can actually reach up and touch the upper right corner of the screen and find the icon. And this was never possible in Windows. I mean, it really wasn't, because the active accessibility that Microsoft uses combined with what screen readers like JAWS and others were doing was designed to give you what they thought was important to you, and that's it. And if you wanted to do anything else, you had to use like the JAWS cursor or the, something like this, but it wasn't the everyday experience. And you never really had the benefit of using things the way they appeared on the screen. There were special commands that you could do to activate a toolbar or something, but it was weird, It wasn't part of the normal navigating experience. On the Mac, that is entirely different. On the Mac, when you navigate with VoiceOver, you essentially have access to everything that is on the screen of a particular app. And so if there's a toolbar, you're going to find that toolbar when you're navigating left and right. If there's a table, you're going to find that table when you're navigating left and right. But the thing you have to understand is that it sort of works in levels, in that when I first start exploring a new app and I use those commands I told you, VO left and VO right, to move left and right, I'm moving at the uppermost level of the app. And I might see toolbar as I move to the right. And it might say navigation toolbar, 8 items, okay? But it doesn't let me hear what those 8 items are. I just happen to know, hey, there's a toolbar with 8 items. And then I might go to the right and it might say sidebar. And again, I don't know what's in that sidebar, but I know it's there. And then I might move to the right again and it might say web area or HTML content or group or something like this. And in all of these cases, I know that means there's more stuff there to see, but I don't know what it is, because what I'm doing right now when I move left and right is I'm getting a view of the uppermost level of the app, kind of like looking down on the city from the helicopter, right? I can see that there are buildings, but I don't know what's going on inside them. Okay, I can see that there are houses, but I don't know who's living in them. I can see that there are cars, but I don't know the story of the people who are driving them. If I want to learn what's going on inside of a building in that city, I have to come down and go inside of it. And when I get inside of it, I'm seeing the entrance to the building. Let's say it's a hotel. I see rooms on either side of me, but I don't know who's staying in them, and I don't know what they look like unless I again go a level deeper and go inside of that room. Well, that method, the process for doing that in Mac OS is called interacting. And it's the same concept. When we move left to right, we're seeing this upper level view. We know there's a toolbar. We know there's a sidebar. We know there's a table. We know there's web area. We know there's a text area, but we don't know what it is. In order to find out what it is, we have to interact with it. When we interact, it takes us a level down deeper into that area and allows us now again to still use VO left and VO right, but now we're moving inside of that area instead of at the uppermost level. And sometimes we can even interact a second time or a third time, depending on what we're doing, to really drill down, and then again still use VO left and VO right to find out what we're seeing. So let me give you a practical example of this. Keep your hints enabled. You know, yes, you can turn them off, but you know what? You can also just skip over them if you don't need them too. Just ignore them and move on. All right. Keeping them enabled will let you know. And the hints on Mac OS, by the way, in case you haven't noticed, by default, the hints are very, very verbose. You know, it will say to you, you are currently on a toolbar inside of a whatever. To begin interacting with the items in this toolbar, press, and it even tells you what to press. It's very, very verbose hints. So you will know very specifically what to do, but leave those hints enabled. If you don't need them, just skip over them. The other thing is there are some keywords that can help you to know, so you don't even have to wait for those hints. Like I mentioned, if you hear toolbar, if you hear group, if you hear area, those terms all mean that I probably need to go down deeper to find out what's inside of them. And the command to get inside, to start interacting with a particular area or group or toolbar or sidebar or web area or whatever, is going to be Control, Option, Shift, down arrow. VO, Shift, down. Or, again, you could use caps lock in place of Control and Option, but VO, Shift, down arrow is your interact command. And if you want to stop interacting, we're done in this area, we want to get back out to a higher level, VO shift up arrow. Okay. So again, let me give you a kind of a practical example of where this might work. You're in Safari and you are going to a specific web page, whatever it may be. Now, Safari by default interacts you with the web content unless you change that setting. So that's, you know, there's always variables here, right? Okay, but the example will still work. At the uppermost level, you'll find at the far left, you go VO left arrow until you can't anymore. You'll find a close button. You'll find these window control buttons we're not going to get into today. You'll find the title. But then you're going to find, and I haven't even looked recently in Big Sur to make sure that it hasn't changed, but the last I remember, it has a group, a back forward group, and you can interact with that group to find the back button or the forward button. You're going to find a toolbar, and you can interact with that toolbar to find a share button, to find your favorites, to find maybe your downloads if you've downloaded something, and eventually even to find an edit field to enter a web address or a search term. And again, I know some of you are thinking, Matt, that's insane. I can press blank command. I'm not even going to share it right now because I don't want to overwhelm people, but you know, I can press this command to go back. I don't have to go through all that. Or I can press this to get to the address bar. I don't have to go through all that. I know. But again, what I'm trying to show you today is the way to navigate if you've never been in the app before. You don't know any of the keyboard shortcuts. You have no clue of the layout of the app. These concepts that I'm giving you today will get you around any app that has even a degree of accessibility to it. Okay, so for right now, just forget that you know that command to jump to the address bar. I use it too. That one I actually do use. And I also use the back command. I don't go to the toolbar every time and interact to find the back button. But forget about that for a minute. All right, focus on the broader concept, because the concept is going to help you to understand Mac OS and navigate anywhere, whereas those keyboard commands won't. Okay, so just focus with me on this for a minute. So we found this toolbar. It has a back button in it. So we know we can VO space on that back button to go back if we want to. We found an edit field where we can type our address, a website, or our search term, okay? That's our toolbar. Now, if we stop interacting with that and we go to the right, we're eventually going to find something that says HTML content area or web area, okay? What is that? That's the main web page. That's whatever we visited. That's where all of our links, all of our form fields, all of the videos, all the exciting stuff that's on that website, that's where they are. They're located inside that HTML area, that web area. And again, if you interact there, then you'll get it and you'll be able to navigate it. And you'll be able to use VO left and VO right and VO spacebar to move around. The same thing is true if you are in the, we're going to teach you next week about Finder. Finder is like, I suppose you might say it's sort of like the Files app. It lets you access all the files and folders on your device, you know. Again, you can interact with the contents of a particular location, like your Macintosh hard drive or iCloud drive, okay? You can interact with all of those that icon area. You can interact with the toolbar to find buttons like back and forward and like share and, you know, all of these different things. Any of these areas, you can interact, and then again, you can move VO left and VO right to move between the items, and VO space to activate or click on an item, okay? And it really is as simple as that. And honestly, everything else is gravy, because those basics will get you around any app. I know I'm starting to be redundant, but I can't say it enough. I really, really want you to get this. You can use anything on a Mac if you know these basics, okay? Everything else we're going to teach you is going to save you time, is going to make it more efficient for you to navigate, because that's what all the rest of it is designed to do. But these are the fundamentals. Every app, with the possible few exceptions in some random cases, but typically every app has a menu bar. And Mac OS itself, even when you're on the desktop, because technically that's a Finder experience, even that has a menu bar. Now, the far left item on the menu bar is always the Apple menu. That's ubiquitous. It doesn't change. The Apple menu is everywhere. And directly to the right of the Apple menu is the application menu. It's going to take on the name of whatever app you are in at the time. Pages, Safari, Mail, Messages, Notes. It's going to take on the name of that app. So if I'm in Pages, the first item in the menu bar is Apple menu. The next one is Pages menu. And then after that, it'll be specific to the app, maybe file, edit, format, insert, you know, whatever is in that particular app. That will be different then at that point. Now, how do we get to the menu bar? VOM for menu. M as in menu. VOM. How do we navigate the menu bar? Well, again, there's shortcut ways, but what's your most basic way? VO left and right arrow to go through the different menus. Find a menu you want, either VO space on it or VO down arrow. And just VO down and VO up because it's a menu. So that one you're going to navigate with the VO down arrow and the VO up arrow. You find what you want, VO space on it. Okay, simple as that. VOM brings you to the menu bar. How do I get like a context menu on an item? There's actually two different ways. Depends on what you're trying to do. If the item calls for a control click, which is the equivalent to a right click. On Windows, it's a right click. On Mac, it's a control click. Nowadays, the mice and the trackpads can be configured that if you do click on the right side, they will do a right click. But basically, it's control click. To do that with VoiceOver, VO Shift M. Simple as that. VO Shift M for menu. The other option is if it's more like a long press, okay, which what we think of in iOS as a long press to get actions and alternative stuff. There's a VoiceOver command there. Instead of VO spacebar to activate, it's VO command spacebar. And again, how do I know which one I need to do? Well, a couple things. Play with it, trial and error. And also, as Lynn said, listen to your hints. When we learn about Notification Center, you're going to find out it tells you, it will say to you to, like, for example, if you get a reminder, take out the garbage, it'll say to activate, press Control Option Spacebar. To snooze or be reminded in an hour, press, or it'll say like, press VO command spacebar to get the actions menu or something. Like, it actually tells you so that you'll know. And you'll be able to then just use VO and the arrow keys to pick which one you want, and VO spacebar to choose the one you want. We are going to introduce the trackpad. Like I said, the beautiful thing about the trackpad is it really does mirror iOS for the most part. And it is actually my favorite way to navigate. So again, we already told you the MacBooks have them built in below the keyboard, kind of like where the mouse, and you think of them in that respect. If you have a quote-unquote desktop Mac, an iMac, a Mac, iMac Pro, Mac Mini, or Mac Pro, you can buy an external Bluetooth trackpad that just sits beside your keyboard, and it can actually take the place of the traditional Apple Magic Mouse. But if you're a VoiceOver user and you want to use the trackpad with VoiceOver, you have to turn on what's known as Trackpad Commander. Now, there are two ways to do this. The quickest way is to press your VO keys, Control and Option, and then rotate two fingers to the right on the trackpad, like your rotor turn gesture, okay? If you're not comfortable yet with that gesture, you can actually go into the VoiceOver utility, which is like VoiceOver settings, basically, which that also, I believe, can be found in that VOH menu, if I'm not mistaken. If not, you can get it from System Preferences, or you can do VO F8, although if you don't have your keys switched, it's VO function F8. But you can get into the VoiceOver utility, and there is a Commanders tab in there, and you can turn on the Trackpad Commander with just a toggle checkbox. So if you're not comfortable yet doing that two-finger rotation, there is another way to turn it on. But the simplest way, just press Control Option, hold them down, and then place two fingers on that trackpad and just rotate them to the right. And you'll hear a little tone, and it will say, I think it actually says Trackpad Commander on. And then you can leave it on. And if a sighted user wants to use your trackpad, you don't have to turn off Trackpad Commander. You can just turn VoiceOver off, Command F5 or tell Siri. And then the trackpad will resume normal function. And then when you turn VoiceOver back on, you got your Trackpad Commander again. Now, with the trackpad, I'm telling you, folks, literally just like iOS. You want to move to the right, you swipe to the right with one finger. You want to move to the left, you swipe to the left with one finger. You want to open something up, you just double tap with one finger. It is almost identical. Even those three-finger double tap and triple tap for mute and for the screen curtain and so forth, that's the same as it is on iOS. Now, as you know, we taught you about a couple things today that they don't have on iOS. One was interacting, and the other is the menu bar. So how do we do that on the trackpad? It's actually very simple. Honestly, it's easier on the trackpad than it is with the keyboard. To start interacting, two-finger swipe to the right. That's it. Just two-finger swipe to the right. To stop interacting, two-finger swipe to the left. I mean, how hard, how much easier could it get? So again, start interacting, put two fingers down on the trackpad and swipe to the right. Stop interacting, two-finger swipe on the trackpad to the left. What's the menu bar? How do you get to the menu bar? Two-finger double tap at the top of the trackpad, because that's where that menu bar is. It's at the top. So two-finger double tap at the top. And there is even a two-finger double tap at the bottom to bring up the dock, but we haven't even taught you what the dock is yet. It's got some of your recent apps, apps on it, I should say. So some people like the dock. It's a quick way to find your apps. The trackpad supports the rotor. See, Mac OS has a rotor. Those of you who have taken our voiceover classes or who have used an iOS device, you probably
And
know.
I will echo the same thing, even though I'm not a heavy trackpad user.
Yeah.
The rotor is your friend.
And we want to review. Let me say, like I always give the same quick spiel about the rotor in case anybody doesn't know what it is. It's a virtual on-screen control, okay, that allows you to perform contextual actions, advanced functions, change settings, and also to navigate like character by character, word by word, line by line, right? That's what the rotor does. It gives you special, in Safari, for example, especially, you can navigate by heading, by link, by visited link, by button, by form control. Well, the rotor lets you choose those things more quickly. Yes, there are keyboard commands for all of that. And there's even a way to move the rotor with the keyboard, believe it or not, guys. There's actually a way to move your rotor with the keyboard. But it's not nearly as easy as doing it on the trackpad, because on the trackpad, it's identical to iOS. You put 2 fingers down. You want to turn that rotor, you rotate 2 fingers to the right on the trackpad. And if you want to turn it back to the previous rotor option, you rotate 2 fingers to the left on the trackpad. You don't need your voiceover keys, okay? No VO keys to do this. And then if you want to move by whatever that rotor is set to, you swipe up and down with 1 finger, just like iOS. And so if I want to move by character, I swipe down repeatedly to go from character to the next character. There is an option in the Mac OS rotor that you don't often see in iOS, at least not exactly in this way. And it's called navigation. Okay. That's important because just like iOS, navigation is left to right with voiceover, and up and down controls your rotor. But sometimes you want to navigate vertically, like in a menu. And now on iOS, they actually call it vertical navigation. But on Mac OS, they just call it navigation. So if you're in a menu and you want to navigate up and down from menu item to menu item, you need to make sure that trackpad, that rotor, is set to navigation. But you'll find that in the rotor, just like everything else. I want to give you 2 more commands to end things. They're not voiceover commands. They're Mac OS commands. These are also available in the menus. I want to stress what we've taught you is enough to find them, but it may not occur to you. And so just 2 real simple commands with the command key that's just to the left or to the right of the space bar, Command W and Command Q. Okay. We said you can get out of anything that you get into. Command W closes the current window. Command Q actually quits the app.
ttjtech.net and stirredup.com.
God bless you all and have a great rest of your day.